It's a new day and you're back in my sewing room again, and I'm going to show you here first of all what I worked on in class the other day. And just as a reminder, what I'm working on is a piece of cake quilt. This is the quilt top pattern. Very easy to do, and it's a great quilt pattern to start with. It's very easy to follow the directions. Yeah. So in class the other day, well, we had lecture as to, what the class was going to be about, and so that took some time. And then we got into preparing our blocks. I showed you the blocks that I was using. That's actually called a layer cake. And then we started cutting the blocks into pieces that we needed for the quilt, and then we started sewing. And I got maybe about 10 blocks done throughout the class time. Class time was 3 hours, so there was a lot of discussion, a lot of demonstration, which was nice, and a lot of talking, But this is one of my completed blocks, okay? You start out with a 5-inch rectangle, 2-inch, and then a 3-inch. And that takes care of your 10-inch block. So, and then you press it all flat, and you kind of group them in, well, like I showed you this one. There's the light green and dark green, and here is light green with the dark green. And you just kind of mix and match the colors like that. Now here's my blue one. I started with the easy ones to match first. Dark blue, light blue, and then you go, the bigger squares are, rectangles rather, are darker than the middle one. And like this. This is white with gold on it, and then green with gold on it in the middle. And then I switched it. Dark green, bigger rectangles, and then the lighter one in the middle. So I'm just continuing on mix matching my blocks. And that's all we had for homework. Yes, we do have homework in this class, and that's what I'm going to work on first here. Then I'm going to get working back on the quilt, okay, for today. And I should finish it up. I'm really going to work at finishing it up, let me put it that way. But let me get busy on the quilt blocks that I need to do. I think I've got about 15 more blocks that I need to complete for class next week. And I'll get those done, no problem. So, and I'm going to show you here the first one, which you take your 5-inch rectangle, and I'm mixing that with the dark blue. That's your 2-inch piece, and you put right sides together. And do a 1/4-inch seam allowance. And I'm going to chain stitch the pieces together. So I'm going to move on to my next 5-inch rectangle piece, which is going to be dark blue mixed with the pink center, and sew those together, right sides together. And you leave a couple stitches in between the, well, here, let me put you down here so you can see. This is how you chain stitch. You leave a couple of stitches in between, and I will feed in this new material after those couple stitches are made, just like that. Okay? That leaves a nice gap to cut the pieces apart when you're ready to sew them differently. Okay. And my next piece, light green, remove my glasses off there, and with the light blue. right sides together. And the next one is with a dark green center. So wasn't that? Nope, that was light green center. I've chained quite a few here, so I'm going to go ahead and cut them apart and put the third piece on the block, and then press these and then do the rest of the squares. So let me show you what you're going to do with a couple of the, and you can chain stitch these as well when you're adding the third block. You could keep going and do each block as you're sewing. You know, I'm just doing 2 at a time and then cutting apart and adding the third strip to each block and chain stitch this much. Did that make sense? Well, you'll see here. I'm going to cut all of these apart. There's just, you know, like maybe what, 3-4 stitches in between, not many. That gives me room to snip without cutting into the fabric. Okay. So let me show you here what I'm talking about. Okay, it would be this one. So it is, again, right sides together with the rest of the block that you've sewn. I'll show you here in a minute. This is what you're striving for. So let me continue. I'm going to continue with this third rectangle here and get them on all the pieces that I previously sewed. I'll bring it back when I'm all finished with putting my blocks together, okay? I'll show you the next step I'm going to work on. I have finished all of the blocks. Everything is sewn together. Now what I'm going to do is move to the iron and press all of these bad boys flat, like I did the other ones in class the other day, like this. And the instructor said it doesn't really matter how you press them, but I've always been taught to press the seam towards the darker fabric. So that's how I did mine. I don't know if you can really see that well, but I pressed the seams outward towards the dark green here. It's a habit, and that's what I'm going to do with these, is just continue pressing towards the darker color of in the block. And after they're all pressed, then I get to trim these bad boys. And they are going to end up being, well, you know, I started out with a 10-inch block, and then I sewed them together. So there's like a half an inch, because you have 1/4 inch seams on both sides of this middle piece. So I get to trim them down to a 9x9 block, all of them. And there are just over 30 squares that I've done. I did extra. You're supposed to have 30 to complete the quilt top. And I did a couple extras in case I didn't like the, you know, the colors scheme going together. I can maybe kind of trade it out with a few others, but I gotta go press these. Let me get that going. Oh, but before I do, let me show you this. I got this at the sewing studio because when you have a class there, for class supplies, you get to have a discount. So on the day of the class, you also get discount. And I went shopping. I bought the backing material for this quilt, and I also bought this contraption, which fits on your ironing board. And this a spray bottle comes with it. I may or may not use it. It depends on what kind of a spray it has, because I do like my fine mist sprayer that I have. Actually, it's a fine mister. Yeah, it's on the ironing board right now, and I've moved my ironing board over to the other spare bedroom, so it gives me more room in here when I have the cutting table up. But anyway, I'm going to attach this to my iron and have a spray bottle real handy, whichever one I put in there. My mister will fit in here too, so it just depends on which one I like the best. We'll see. But anyway, I'm going to go get these bad boys ironed. And now what we get to do is trim these blocks to be 9x9. So I've got my cutting table partially up, and let's see here. This one is perfectly 10x10, so I'm going to trim it down to 9x9. Let me show you. Okay. Nine. And 9 this way. Which is that line? Okay. So there's my first 9x9 block, and I'm going to continue on and do the rest here. And this is really all I need to do for class next week, is just to trim all of these to be, see, it's a 9x9 square. Then I'm ready for class. Well, I finished trimming all my blocks. Okay, they're all 9x9, a string. So this is as far as we were supposed to get for class for next week, and I could go ahead and cut the binding strip. I may not, but at least I've got this part all done. And there's more than 30 blocks here. 30 is what you need for the quilt top. So when I lay it out on the tables in the classroom, I can decide You know, there may be a block that I just don't care for in the mixture of things, so I'll remove that and try another block. I'll play with the colors a little bit, but basically I think you can tell that I stick to jewel tones in a way. Yeah. So, but this is what I'm working with in my class. So I've got my homework all done. The next part of my sewing for this afternoon is to put the quilt that I've been working on over here, which you can see on the table, is to put this quilt, I rolled it up to the center point, which is right here. Let me show you. The center point is the two rectangles here, or I guess they're really kind of squares. But anyway, these two purplish colors, that's the center. I'm going to be starting, I think I'm just going to go straight down this way for right now and work my way out, you know, to the edges on each side. But I have to put this under my machine, so let me get that going, and then I'm going to start quilting on this bad boy. Yeah. All right, I've got the quilt positioned on my machine right in the middle here, and I did kind of change my mind on how I'm going to quilt this. At first I was going to go 1/4 of an inch along the seam line all the way around, but I'm going to do right along the seam line. I'm going to make my quilting stitch and just go over the whole top that way, but it's going to be basically just one seam line along each seam on top. Does that make sense? Well, you'll see it. Okay, I'll show you. But I'm going to get started on this, and I'll bring it back when I'm all done. I think I need my glasses on for this. My first row is done. I'm going to continue on here, and I'll bring it back when I'm all finished. But I'm going to keep at this until I finish the quilt top, and then all I will have left is the binding to do. So I'll show you when I finish working on the quilt top here. The quilting job has been finished. I don't know if you can really tell too much, but what I did was I stitched along this seam line right here all the way around, and down here, everywhere on the quilt. And I guess the way that you could really see it is on the back. Well, maybe not too good either. It's a dark color. You can barely see it. But now I begin the binding job, and that's a hand sewn job. But for the most part, my quilt is finished. And I'm very pleased with it.